Welcome to another Machine Design Quick Chat. I'm Bob Vavra, Senior Content Director of Machine Design. Today, we're going to be talking about choosing an industrial enclosure for use in outdoor environments. Enclosure selection is usually one of the last things that gets considered in the electrical design process. But if there's not a proper selection of enclosures, it can mean the difference for these critical components between long life and early failure, especially true in harsh outdoor environments. So understanding the application and the environment in which the enclosure will be located is crucial. Understanding the materials, the ratings, and the options available will help you make the right decision based on the particular application. And to help explain that a little bit today, we're joined by Jeff Roy, the Enclosure Product Manager with Altech Corporation. Jeff has more than 25 years of experience in the industry. And Jeff, these have been tough times to be outside, but that probably is all the more reason we should be talking about enclosures for outdoor environments. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
Those environmental elements have a great impact on how our enclosure will perform over the years of operation. So at the outset, what are some of the basic concerns that need to be considered when you're first looking at this?
One of the first things you need to consider is what the specific conditions that the enclosure will be needing to withstand. These conditions can vary in the application, but some of the most common hazards encountered by outdoor electrical enclosures include dirt, dust, debris, precipitation against rain, sleet, and snow, and sometimes even ice formation on the exterior of the enclosures. Those are some of the more commonly considered issues. But there's also extreme temperature changes, which can be a problem for change in condensation, which can actually form inside of a sealed enclosure. And a lot of people don't really think about that, something that they overlook. Another application could be high pressure water from washdowns or submersion in water, or even corrosion from seawater spray. And constant ultraviolet radiation can be a major concern in outdoor applications, obviously. So choosing the right material is really dependent on which type of conditions you're going to see in your particular application.
The default is to think of electrical enclosures as metal, and that's been the traditional choice over the years. But today there are several other materials available for specific applications that might be a better fit. Can you talk about some of these applications and some of the advantages and disadvantages of each one?
Sure. Yeah, choosing the best material for the application at hand significantly impacts the function and performance of the enclosure long-term. The most common material would be steel, like you said, but then there's also aluminum and various plastic materials. Steel is the most traditional enclosure material because of its durability and cost effectiveness. And like you said, design engineers often think about purchasing metal enclosures first, which is primarily based on the idea that they're stronger or more durable than many other materials. But steel enclosures are highly susceptible to corrosion unless they're painted or galvanized to assist with that corrosion resistance. And if your outdoor application isn't all that demanding in terms of weather and corrosion and things like that, then steel's a great choice. But it's also fairly heavy and may not be ideal for some applications. For example, if it's good with impact resistance, but if it becomes dented, it can usually be a liability for the seal, or even if the finish is damaged, then you can end up with corrosion on steel. A lot of people will then think, oh, we'll go to stainless steel then because it's more strong, more resistant to chemicals and things like that. But that's a lot more expensive and it's a lot more difficult to customize. So then people start to turn to things like aluminum or plastic. Aluminum is definitely more durable than some outdoor materials, and it is lightweight compared to steel. Naturally corrosion resistant, performs pretty well in harsh environments, and pretty easy to modify. But a lot of times the sizes of cast aluminum enclosures are pretty limited. Because of the die casting and stuff, they are usually limited to a smaller size enclosure. There's a few different plastics used in the market. Some of the ones that are common are like styrene plastics, like ABS or polystyrene. They're pretty cost effective. The problem with those is they're not really good for outdoor applications because they're not UV resistant. So you're going to have some yellowing and cracking over time. Fiberglass is another plastic that's used, which is quite durable and resists chemical and corrosion. But it does degrade under direct sunlight exposure unless it has specific UV inhibitors added. And this material is also generally pretty costly and heavy and a little more difficult to customize. On the other hand, polycarbonate has become one of the most popular choices for outdoor enclosures. It's really strong and lightweight, and it's also non-corrosive and highly impact resistant. A lot of advances have been made with that type of material to increase its strength and flame retardancy. They're quite cost effective, very easy to modify. It's really an incredibly versatile material, and it's got a wide range of indoor and outdoor applications. One example that makes it a little more flexible is that you can get it with transparent covers, because polycarbonate can be provided in transparent material instead of just a solid material, so that if you needed to see the product that you have inside of the enclosure, it has this option. So it's been really popular lately because of its combination of toughness, flexibility, and lower cost, and ends up being a great option for outdoor use.
Well, that takes care of the outside. That's only part of the process. Let's talk about the ratings for the enclosures themselves and what needs to be considered in that.
Okay, so yeah, ratings that you'd need to look at for outdoor would be impact ratings, general ratings as far as outdoor ratings themselves, and agency approvals. And this will be based on, again, what environment your enclosure actually needs to withstand. But one of the rating systems that you could look at would be the NEMA system, which is the most common rating system for rating outdoor enclosures in the US, or the IP, or Ingress Protection Rating System, which is more of an international system. Both of these systems are normally found on an enclosure spec, so it's easy to determine what the rating is for that enclosure. And when it comes to NEMA ratings, they're not strictly in ascending order, so you can't necessarily say, okay, I want the highest NEMA rating, so give me the highest number. For example, NEMA 12 ratings are actually not recommended for outdoor use because they have a lot less stringent standard of protection than, say, a NEMA 4 rating. The most common ratings for outdoor use for NEMA would be type 3 enclosures, which are mostly used outdoor, but this is the lowest rating for NEMA, so engineers have to consider exact locations of how they're going to use the enclosure before choosing that. Type 4 and 4X are probably the most common NEMA rating. They offer a greater degree of protection against harsh weather than type 3 enclosures do, which includes watertight seal, preventing ingress of water, and all of the protections against ice formation and dust and debris and things like that. Then there's also NEMA 6P or NEMA 6. These are more for submersible areas where you're going to have maybe an underground mine or an offshore application where you're worried about the enclosure being underwater. IP ratings, on the other hand, are a 2-digit rating where the numbers are in sequential order. So the first digit tells you the protection against solid particles, and the second digit tells you the protection against water. So the combination of these two numbers will tell you what level of protection you have for each of those types of instances. For example, an IP66 enclosure has full protection from dust, and then also protects from water jets for water, whereas an IP54 would only prevent some dust and then only splashing water. So it's pretty easy to determine from the IP rating which level of protection you need. Another area you have to be concerned with is impacts. So a lot of times in outdoor applications, you're going to have something impacting the enclosure and you have to worry about it breaking or getting damaged in some way. So there you can look at an IK rating. An IK rating is also using a 2-digit system ranging from 0 to 10. And it basically, the higher the number, the higher the impact resistance. So normally for enclosures, you're in the range of IK6 up to IK10. And that'll tell you the basic impact resistance. There's a lot of third-party testing that goes on with this too. Companies like UL will test it for the impact rating, but then they'll also do aging testing, and they'll test it under freezing temperatures so that you can make sure the enclosure will really withstand things in the environment rather than just a favorable lab test where it's going to be at a nominal temperature. You really need to make sure it's tested in all of those conditions, extended UV tests and things like that. So that brings us to third-party certifications. So UL is the one that's mostly looked at here in the US. In Canada, they have CSA, and those two agencies work together a lot. So you have CSA and UL approvals with CUL that covers both countries. Other requirements people might need to look for if they're exporting outside of the country is something like IEC for European ratings. And testing agencies like UL can do testing for those other European ratings as well normally. So it's really just a matter of where the customer needs to use that enclosure, and then they have to make sure they're meeting the right norms.
So we've covered a lot of key points on this. We've covered it from inside to out. But let's take a look at one last thing before we wrap up, and the design features, some of the options when you're choosing an enclosure. What are some of the real key things to look for there?
Yeah, the design of an enclosure has a significant effect on the usability and longevity of the enclosure and the application as well. A well-designed enclosure usually offers features to make things easier for the user, as well as improving its effectiveness in those tough outdoor environments. One example of such a design is the Geo series that we offer at Altech Corporation. These are robust enclosures that were designed specifically with outdoor use in mind and with convenience to the user in mind as well. So you can see that by some of the specific specs and features that the enclosure has. The enclosures are made of a high-grade, lightweight polycarbonate material, which is UV, weather, and impact resistant. They boast IP67 ratings, as well as NEMA Type 4X ratings, as well as an IK9 impact rating. So that means the enclosures are dust tight, can withstand temporary immersion, for indoor and outdoor rated, or rated for splashing water, wind-blown dust and rain, hose-directed water. They'll not be affected by formation of ice on the enclosure. They're non-corrosive. They'll withstand 10 joules of impact energy. And all of this has been tested down to like a minus 25 degrees C per the normal UL requirements. But a lot of that is based on where the design was focused. So one of the innovative features on it is the ratings are so high because it uses what we call a drain protect sealing system. This system has an overlapping cover to keep moisture away from the seal edge where the lid and base meet. That way the base area will be overlapped and you won't have the direct moisture coming directly on the seal, which can then cause problems over time. It also has drainage channels on the side of the enclosure, so that diverts moisture back away from the enclosure seal to the back of the enclosure and kind of drains it away. This will help a lot to keep the elastomer seal working well over the years. One of the things to consider when using a sealed enclosure in outdoor environments is condensation, like I mentioned earlier. There could be condensation problems when using a sealed enclosure in environments with varying temperature and humidity. That's due to the fact that air can only hold a certain amount of water vapor at certain temperatures or pressures. The higher the temperature, the higher the air pressure, the greater the maximum possible water content. As daytime temperatures rise, the warming in the air can gradually absorb water vapor contained in the ambient air, and power dissipated by the devices that are inside of the enclosure can also raise this temperature. Then if the outside air temperature falls in the evening, the outer walls of the enclosure cool down. When the dew point is met, the water vapor contained in the air condenses, and the air inside the enclosure and actually makes condensate. So you can end up with water collecting inside the box, which may cause damage, obviously, to the installed electrical components. And that's something that we've seen over the years where people are saying, oh, I have a sealed enclosure. How can I possibly have water inside? There must be something wrong with the seal. But then when you test that in this type of environment, you can see that this water condensate can be a really big problem in areas, especially if you're using it in a desert application or something where it's getting really hot in the day and then really cool at night. It can make a severe impact on it. So to prevent this, in the Geo series, we have patented air ventilation elements, which can maintain the IP protection level of the enclosure. And basically you put a set of ventilation elements in the enclosure, one low and one high, and this allows for continuous air exchange so that the inside and outside air are able to mix, but still protecting it from the harsh outdoor environment. So this keeps any humidity or condensation from forming in the enclosure.
There's a lot of things to consider with outdoor enclosures, and we've gotten a lot of great information. I want to thank Jeff Roy, the enclosure project manager with Altech Corporation, for his expertise and his insights here today. I'm Bob Vavra. Thanks for joining us on this Machine Design Quick Chat, and have a great rest of your day.